Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Great Mondays Radio. Today, I have Hadi Radwan. He is a multiple-time serial entrepreneur and founder and insurtech expert. His current company is called Asteya. It is insurance in the U.S. market. So he's entering into this, what is definitely a very hot field. Rapidly growing. Insurance is ready to be revolutionized for sure. So I'm excited to talk to him about his fully remote operation and how he builds that culture in that and gets the right people on board to do the right things. Hadi, welcome to Great Mondays Radio.
Hey, Josh, how are you doing today? Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for staying up late. You're in London, but like you said, it's a fully remote world, and everybody's WhatsApping you at all times of the day. So for good, bad, or otherwise, that's the reality, right?
Indeed. I think technology has eliminated the boundaries of privacy. As long as someone has access to you, their expectations now is that it's no longer asynchronous. So they have your LinkedIn, they send you a message. They wait. If you don't respond, they say, oh, what's happening? Let me send them a WhatsApp message. Let me send them a Slack message. So eventually, I think the what we call inbox zero is creeping into everyone. Everyone is now so anxious that they need to answer. It's a FOMO play.
Is this the future we were promised? I was expecting flying cars, but really what we have is people messaging me at all times of the night.
Exactly.
Answers. Hey, all right. Well, you have built a company called Asteya, A-S-T-E-Y-A, correct? Sorry, I didn't mean to check.
Correct.
All right, good. A-S-T-E-Y-A. And Asteya is pretty quickly growing. How long has this company been around? How many employees do you have? And tell us a little bit about your decision to make it entirely distributed, even though you're serving only the US market.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started in 2017. We stayed in stealth mode for a couple of years because as a company in a regulated environment, you need to make sure you're licensed and all the states that you want to sell. You need to get accepted by certain carriers so that you can sell their products. Yep. So there's a little bit of a ramp up, and that's why you don't see a lot of insurtech surviving and growing and making sure they are alive. You see a handful which actually have raised quite a lot of money, but we've decided not to go and start without having all the proper regulatory aspects in place. Currently, we're around 60 people, and we've been operational for the past 3 years in the US and almost all states.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so you're going about it the right way, the legal way. So that's excellent. That's not always assumed with a lot of startups. So good on you for that. Now you have employees around the world. Is that correct?
Yes. So we're in 3 different continents. And your original question was, how did we end up in a remote setting, right? So yeah. I think the first aspect of all of this is COVID, right? It forced us to reconsider workspaces, because originally your expectation is once you set up a company, people need to come to the office. And that has originally made a lot of entrepreneurs select a city. So I want to be in San Francisco, in New York, in London. And then based on this, you are essentially limited to the talent pool that's in that city. So when COVID came in, we had to rethink how we hire, how we manage people. And that is actually good for us, because I was a big proponent of remote working for years, but I'm not the only one in the company. And it's usually a team decision to decide if we do remote or non-remote. And with COVID, we proved the hypothesis that you can find people that could work from home and deliver value to the customer, to the shareholder, and definitely to their employees. So essentially, that was the starting point. And then the biggest advantage is now there's no more boundaries for talent. And I think we've seen companies who are unicorns today who are managing this. On my podcast, The First 100, I've interviewed the co-founder of Oyster, which is a company that, it gets you, if you have a talent outside where your legal entity is registered, you can essentially hire that talent through them, and they're on your payroll. So COVID has brought in different business models that supported remote working. And then more importantly, the big companies like Microsoft, Salesforce, Slack, they Zoom, which we are on today, has adapted very quickly and made it easy and accessible to create this virtual meeting. I would guess that was much harder before. So you'd see a different pool of companies adapting much faster than the legacy companies like WebEx, which was very hard to implement, very difficult.
Yeah, Skype wasn't it every time, right?
Exactly. Skype wasn't what it was now. So I think the tools and the different companies has made it easy to accept remote working.
I would venture to guess that we're still in the early days. I think we're going to see a lot of new tools that are going to make it even easier, because I don't feel like everything is as easy as being in the office. So creative collaborative work. So we use Miro. There's also Mural. Those are great collaborative tools. Bring some benefits to some of this work that we wouldn't necessarily have in the office. But I think there's still quite a bit out there and I think we're going to see some tech really come to fruition and to serve customers like you, right? People that build these organizations completely distributed. So what does it take to be an employee at a fully distributed company? When you think about your employees and the best employees that you have, what are the qualities? Because I don't know that it's for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are certain guiding principles that need to align between the employee and the employer in that case. So one, when you look for a company to get hired into, you do your research, right? You go in, you try to read their mission, their value statements. You go to Glassdoor, you start reading around different aspects, and then there's the hiring process. For us, the value statements, for example, are overhyped. We do not try to display all of these different values that say, hey, respect to your teammates, communication, honesty, excellence. So
I noticed they weren't. I looked for them on your website and you didn't see any.
Yeah, because you could put in a nice story, but even people who are just joining, it doesn't probably align with their guiding principles from day one. They have to integrate with the team. They have to believe in the company, which takes time. It doesn't happen from day one unless you're a founder or part of the founding team. So when we interview people, we try to be consistent in our message, and we say what we believe in is we need happy employees so that we can get happy customers, and then eventually we will be able to get happy investors. It's not the customer at the forefront of the company, it's the employee. And the reason we do this is if you have a happy employee who's engaged, who's developing and growing, who's into his work, then they can deliver value to the customer, which would feel that yes, that these people care, and then they would generate repeat business, and that would translate into profits. So the cycle is, a lot of people say customer first, we say employee first. We try to do a lot of things for the employee. So we have, while our pay could be average, we have a lot of benefits, and those benefits could make the employee feel more accepted, more motivated, and then eventually they would be happy to contribute to the customer, and then the customer would definitely contribute to the investor. So that's essentially how we try to look at our messaging to those that are coming in. So we say we value you, and here's the reason why we value you, right? Because you would value the customer, and then the customer would value the investor indirectly.
All right. Well, so are you saying then that one of the attributes that you look for in an employee or in a potential candidate is if they're happy?
It's not the attribute, it's what we want the outcome to be. So we want to get someone in with a skill set that, you know, is contributing.
So it's your job,
yes, to make them happy.
To make them happy.
Yes, exactly. So that's what we say. We get you in, we make you happy, and then you make our customers happy, and then the customers make our investors happy.
What about, and I've forgotten the technical term, the phenomenon where a human, it's most popularly referred to with raises, when you get raised, right? Or a raise. And so you get an extra, I don't know, 5,000 or 10,000 a year. So it's an extra $50 a month or whatever it might be. But then you get used to it. And then you're like, I could really use a raise, right? So it's like you elevate, it is sort of a glitch in our brain, the way that we work, right? You have to work really hard to appreciate what you have, because you really always want to have more. And so when we think about the benefits or whatever it might be, then those people, they can be satisfied, right? You certainly don't want them suffering at the bottom of the pay scale. They want to be able to serve their pertinent need. But even with benefits, it's like, I just expect it. I'm just expecting these things now. So how do you consider that phenomenon, or how do you counter for that? And are there other tools or methods that you use to create a happy employee?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the way we try to nail this down is we try to be as data driven and scientific as we can. We cannot nail it 100%, but we try to do that. So we have a career progression framework. So someone comes in, here's where you are in the career progression framework, here how you can move up the levels. And by the way, in each level, these are the ranges of salaries that you should expect. And that range would, be different between a performing person that's A versus B versus D. So they could at least essentially have a fair pay, and they can compare themselves to where they are in the frameworks. So the expectations.
They have a roadmap and they know where they can go.
Exactly. So the expectation is managed. So yes, you expect that you can get a raise, but if you don't get a raise, then here's why, right? Either because you haven't moved up, or because the company is not performing well, and let's say the shareholders decided not to distribute any bonus. These are like externalities, but the internal, intrinsic, let's say, decisions are in the framework. So it's very scientific. At least they know where they want to go from A to B to C, D along their career. The second part is we try to do OKRs, so objective, key, and results, for everyone within the organization, so they can know what to expect at the end of that year. And then we say, hey, listen, this is the expectation. You didn't get here. Is it because of us? Is it because of you? So we do that post-mortem, and we try to do it quarterly, although we failed a lot, because it's a lot of work to get everyone quarterly to do the reviews, unless you're a huge company with a team that is doing this full-time, right? And that's an additional cost for a startup. So we try to balance between what we can do and what we cannot do. But I think the core thing is, at the beginning, we try to hire for performance. So we say, listen, this is not a family, it's a team. You come in, you're expected to contribute. You're sitting at the comfort of your home. We want you to perform. Here's your metrics. Here's the tools you have to use. And it's easy in a tech company to know if someone is working or not, right? Because you have peers that are doing either similar jobs or similar tasks. So you can assess very easily if someone is not performing. And the reason we hire for performance is, if you hire for performance, you eventually get someone who's, let's say, producing strong performance, which translate to strong results within the organization, which translates to strong achievements, and now you have a high performing culture, because now the expectation is that everyone is high performance, they are treated equally, there's a career progression, and then we cut the weaklings out. So the weaklings usually leave on their own because they cannot keep up with everyone else, and that would create an environment that's similar. And I think, again, it's a lot of people might not agree with this, but we look for the Netflix way of building culture, which is we're a team, not a family. And in a team, if someone is not playing well, like in a basketball, they bench you, they put you on the bench, and then they cut you out if you're not performing. And I think it's fair when you say this upfront to someone coming in, rather than finding out that there is these, let's say, a bad culture that people would backstab you, and then suddenly they're trying to make you look bad. So we try to tell people from the beginning, this is a remote environment. You're having some advantages, which is you see your family more, you're with them. There's less commute, so you're not wasting time on commute, but definitely there you need to perform.
How do you assess for someone, and you don't get 100% right, you just described that, but what are you doing on the front end when you're looking at candidates, when you're talking to folks, when you're doing interviews? How do you assess for this performance oriented person?
So there's two ways to look at. One is I try to create standardized tests, which I share with everyone at the beginning. So my philosophy is a little bit different. I don't know if you've seen that when you apply to work, there is a gatekeeper. So you send a CV to an employee, there's a gatekeeper. That gatekeeper is a little bit opinionated. So they look at your CV, they say, oh, it might not fit the job description. So they either don't respond or they send you a decline. What I do when I do a job post is I do not decline anyone. Anyone that puts the job post, I give them a link, and that link has a test case, which gives me, if someone is if they pass that litmus test, which could be like I'm giving an example, it could be a writing test, an IQ test, maybe an industry expertise test, something like that. So I do a standardized test for the job I'm hiring for, and then I send it to any client, any employee who submits their CV. I do not judge the CV. I actually would look at the person's results. Now, once that person goes and passes the litmus test, then I would interview them. And I would ask them, okay, your CV fits our profile, your CV doesn't fit, why? And then we go into that personal interview. And then from there, I try to identify or map the values that we have to stories that the candidate would tell me about. So let's say, I would say our values is you need to be scientific. And by being scientific, it means you build around metrics, you have to trust the data, you hypothesize, test, validate, iterate, all the possible values around being scientific. And then I would ask them, give me a story or an incident where you were scientific. And then I try to dig more and more. So eventually I would be able to match our values to their values. And if they're there, then I think one is we pass the litmus test of people who are high performance, then we go through the personal, and then I let them get to interview other people within the organization. So I don't make the decision on my own. That would allow three things. One is making sure I'm not making, let's say, decision just because I like the person or I dislike the person.
Sure.
The second part, the second part is when someone else within the organization meets them, then we also would see that cultural fit. Did they click with that person? Did they not click with that person? And then finally, we give that person the chance to see if they like working with us. Did they like me? Did they like the other team members? Did they like the job task? Did they like the process? And if that's the case, then we've already de-risked a lot of the process of hiring.
So at the beginning, you said your values weren't that important, but what I think you're saying is promoting or marketing those values to the world is not where you're going to emphasize that, because you're using them specifically for vetting candidates, which I agree with, right? That is absolutely one of the powerful uses of values. So you're using them, you're just deciding that they're not in a traditional sense. Maybe you're agitating against sort of the traditional definition of values.
Yeah, we don't like to put them on the walls. Like, it's something that either you have it or not, because what happens is when you put them out there, there's a lot of candidates who prepare for your values. So they beat the test. They know that this company values, this company values being scientific. So now I'll prepare stories around that. But when you're in the interview and I'm sharing them like we're speaking now informally, then when I put you on the spot, either you have it or you don't have it. You cannot fabricate a story from scratch. I mean, some people can, but generally it becomes more informal to pick those up.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And then do you use those values to reward and recognize your employees, or no?
I try to reiterate them as much as possible, but if someone deviates, that's not the end of the world. Again, the way we've put them is they're things that are actionable. It's not like things that you do not, you just have to remember them. Like, one of them is make it simple and easy. Less is more. Streamline the process, avoid rigid rules, admit mistakes. These are things that are make things simple and easy. So they're like, we value a lot people admitting to mistakes and failing fast. Yes. Because that means you're actually learning. As long as they're operational learning, that's good. That means you're trying to get things done. The problem becomes if you haven't learned and you're repeating them. This is where you actually cost the company more money, because the first part is okay, because you're experimenting, you're going to fail. That's a no-brainer. It's a startup. The second time, it's a problem.
How do you demonstrate that making mistakes is okay? Because that's a big problem that a lot of organizations, a lot of employees and organizations and employees have, where they're like, people are afraid to make mistakes. What is it that you're doing? You say, we actually encourage that. What does the encourage look like?
I raise my hands. I'm the first one to admit the mistake in front of
so modeling,
other people.
Modeling.
Yes. I'm not afraid to say that. I would say, listen, we've made a hiring mistake. We made a strategic decision here. Here's what we've learned from it. Hopefully we can, change. Hopefully we don't need to do that again. So that's the most important part. And if someone makes a mistake that actually is detrimental, then we issue warnings, which is normal, right? You just need to inform people that it's okay to make mistakes, but you have to admit it. You have to say, okay, I've raised my hand, I made a mistake, it's normal, but I'm owning it, I acknowledge it.
So the problem is really when they make a mistake but don't voice it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't admit the mistakes. They say, that's right. It's someone else's, it's not me, it's them, right? Yeah. The problem with this philosophy is that there's always two people involved in the mistake. Now, the extent of who's liable for that can vary, right? But it's never one person's fault. It's always multiple people involved. Yeah. So you cannot blame. The blame mentality is something that would kill culture.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, ownership is ownership of work, ownership of mistakes. These are all things that are really, really important to build a strong culture, because then you do build that trust. Oh, okay. When they make a mistake there, I'm gonna be afraid. If you're telling everybody, oh, it's Josh's fault, then I'm not gonna want to work with you. And that's a real problem. Any final words of wisdom or pieces of advice, hard-won wisdom for folks that are inside of a highly or 100% distributed organization? I mean, we did talk a lot about a lot of really amazing things here, and I really, really appreciate. I learned a ton. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you're like, you know what? If I had to do it again, or this is what I've learned, what would you advise? What's one thing that you've learned from your your years in now you're couple years doing this?
Yeah, I think it's very important that you model such a framework from someone who has done it before. So I think the first proponents of remote working were the founders of Basecamp. And I interviewed one of the founders on my podcast, and they were big on remote from day one. They have a book on remote working.
Yep.
And I think if you want to start remote working and you don't know where to start, it's important that you model and get a mentorship. Could be virtual mentorship, like a book, so that you don't do the same mistakes someone else does. So that's the first thing. The second part is have frameworks in place, simple frameworks like the hiring framework. How do you deal with certain instances? You have to be firm within your decision making when it comes to remote, because a lot of people, they like remote because it gives flexibility, but then the performance would suffer. So you have to have as well a proper processes in place to make sure all of this. And I think make sure to get your operating principles written down, so that eventually every time you're doing stand-up meetings or you're doing your quarterly operating cadence, to always reiterate them, so that people understand that these are things not written on the wall. They're actually actionable things. And they would notice eventually, when you hire people that believe in those principles, they don't need to memorize them. It's actually built into them, because this is what they believe in. So now they would be seeing them all over the place. Every time I talk to you, Josh, if we both believe in the principle of be better tomorrow than you were yesterday, then I think it makes sense that this is a curious person. He's here to learn. He's always improving. If he makes mistakes, he's admitting them. He's taking those learnings to help others and grow the organization. I think you would see them in the actions of your employees.
Right. Amazing. That's great. It's codifying, really getting it down and making sure everybody is aware of those. That is a big advantage for those folks that can do it. Hadi Radwan, I really appreciate it. Founder of Asteya, Asteya. Look for them on LinkedIn or asteya.world. He also has a podcast called How to Build Software for Non-Technical Founders. If you're interested in learning more about starting a company, or you have with that's built on technology, but you don't know the first thing about it, this is what he's trying to do, and I appreciate that, trying to translate it for the rest of us. Hadi, it's been amazing. Thank you so much. I've learned a ton from our conversation.
Thank you, Josh, for having me. Have a great evening.